in that day is always referring to the last days, the day of the apocalypse, the day of tribulation, the day of wrath, the day of his fierce anger, the day of Jacob's trouble, etc., etc. It's a metaphor referring to the last days. And it says, in that day there shall be an altar and a pillar, and this altar and pillar will both be in the middle of Egypt and at its border. And that this altar is going to be for a sign of God, to God, in the last days. Now, how can something be in the middle of a country and at the border at the same time? That sounds impossible.
An enigma there, huh?
Yeah, well, in order to understand that, you've got to understand that in ancient times, Egypt was split into two. There was Upper Egypt and there was Lower Egypt. And the border that divided Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt ran straight across from east to west, and it cut across the apex of the Nile, where the Nile splits up and goes into the Nile Delta, which goes into the Mediterranean. And the only altar and pillar that's right in the middle of Egypt, and is also on that border, is the Great Pyramid of Giza. So we're told that this altar and pillar is going to be a sign and a witness to the Lord of hosts, or to God, in that day, in the last days. So what is the Great Pyramid of Giza a sign of and a witness to? You know? Right, so in order to figure out this enigma, we jump up into the Gospel of John, which is something that the Messiah spoke about that many of your listeners might recognize. He said, in my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you unto myself, that where I am, there you will be also. So he talked about going to this house of many mansions. Now, we know that he ascended and went to this place called heaven, which I believe is a parallel universe outside of our time bubble, outside of our cosmos, our universe. Then you jump up to Corinthians, and Paul wrote, and he talked about that we have a house in heaven whose hands were not made by human hands. Then and he says its architect and its builder was God. Then you go up to the book of Hebrews, and it says, Abraham looked for a city in heaven whose builder and maker is God. Then in another place in Hebrews chapter 12, it speaks about this heavenly city. It says, but you have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of the living God. So it literally talks about this city being in this place called heaven in a parallel universe. Then you jump into the book of Revelation and you read about what's happening there. It talks about the Messiah, Jesus, going to heaven. He's sitting on the right hand of his Father, who's on a throne. They're surrounded by 24 other thrones with 24 elders on it. We don't know who those guys are because we're not told. They're probably the same guys that it speaks about in Genesis when it says, let us make man in our image. In the image of God made he man. Then we're told that this is surrounded by many myriads and myriads, or many of these angels, these spirit men that we call angels. Then at the end of the book of Revelation, it jumps into the future. I'm talking about after the apocalypse, after all the bad stuff that's going to happen during the book of Revelation time. It talks about a new heaven and a new earth in the future. And it describes this city coming down out of heaven, descending onto this new earth. And it describes this city in very, very great detail. This is in Revelation chapter 21. It tells us all the stones this city is made out of. It gives us the thickness of the walls. We're told that it's got 12 gates made out of a single pearl each. We're told that the river of life flows out of it, that the tree of life is there for the healings of the nations, etc., etc., etc. In fact, when you get into the measurements of this city, at the end of it, it gives us the dimensions, rather, of this future city. And we're told its length and its breadth and its height are the same. That is a pyramid in shape, Henrik. The length and breadth or height are the same. So when you get back to Isaiah 19, and it talks about an altar and a pillar in the midst of the land of Egypt, it's going to be a sign of something to come and a witness to something to come. It is speaking about this pyramid city, which is called the New Jerusalem, Mount Zion, the city of the living God, which is to descend out of heaven onto the new earth in the future, 1,000 years from now. So what I'm saying is that, if you like, there's a connection between the Great Pyramid of Giza and this future pyramid city. The Great Pyramid of Giza is pointing into the future, pointing out this future pyramid city, the New Jerusalem, Mount Zion, the city of the living God. And this city of God is pointing back at the Great Pyramid of Giza. There's a direct connection between the two of them. And my book is the first book that's ever come up with this theory, linking the Great Pyramid of Giza with the city of God, which is in this place called heaven. But what I'm saying is, Heinrich, and this is the distinction, is that when the fallen angels fell to earth, originally some 5,500 years ago, that they built this original pyramid with its white, smooth, iridescent stone, with the gold pyramidion right slap bang in the middle of the world, with the shafts pointing at four particular stars, with all the mathematical intricacies and the anomalies, the incredible building it is. But that these guys built this as an earthly representation of a celestial reality. Mm-hmm. Because people that are into biblical studies know that Satan, or the devil, if you will, he always copies or imitates or duplicates what the true God does. So when these guys fell to earth, they built this pyramid as an earthly representation of the city that they had come from, because they fell to earth. But they built it as a monument to their own pride, their own ego, and their own hubris. But now, what I'm doing is I'm pointing out in my book that this is actually an earthly representation of this celestial reality, and that it is pointing at this future city which is to come in the future, which is described in some magnificent detail in the second last chapter of the book of Revelation. And that fulfills the enigma of the prophecy written by Isaiah some 800 years BC, where he said that in the end times, there will be an altar and a pillar in the middle of Egypt and on its border, and it would be a sign and a witness unto God in the last days.
So what about the idea that even the pyramid might be working as some kind of, there's theories floating around that it might be a stargate, meaning that it actually is a connecting place between heaven and earth, so to speak, symbolically, or actually, depending on how you look at it. But what's your take on that? Does it represent that in the same way, or is this the artificial version then that we've been given by the Nephilim, so to speak, of this city that you're talking about?
Well, it may have other implications. It may be some sort of a portal or a stargate. I do not know, Heinrich, is the straight answer. And if I don't know the answer to something, I'll just tell you, I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of other things going on there, the mathematical stuff. I mean, it points at Orion, Sirius, Beta Ursa Minor, and Alpha Draconis. And by Draconis is one of the stars, which means the dragon, and that's beside the constellation of serpents, which is the serpent. So the serpent, the dragon, Orion was one of the Greek gods and hunters. Sirius is associated with the goddess Isis, and Zeta Orionis is associated with Osiris, the Egyptian high god of death and resurrection and rebirth. So it's tying all these stars and this building in with gods, with a small g, with fallen angels, the Draconis, serpents, the dragon, the serpent, the Egyptian high god of death and resurrection. And if you go and look at all those things in Egypt, and I've been to Egypt, to the temples, you'll see all these incredible buildings and all this mystical stuff that's going on about them going to the underworld and to the afterlife. So whether it's portals or there's other stuff, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field. But one thing I do know is that they all have celestial and mathematical and starry associations.
Yes.
But we've lost a lot of that knowledge now.
And you mentioned, of course, again there, that the remaining Nephilim will be let out first, so to speak. Does this mean that they're trapped somewhere, do you think, underground, or will they come from the heavens again? Or are they somewhere up on waiting on another planet, or is there not a dimension? And if so, any ideas when this will happen? When will they be let out into the earth again, or onto the earth?
Well, exactly, you are right. I was sort of going to hold this till the second section, but if I can mention it briefly now, if you like.
Yes, we can start going to it, and then we can begin to round things up for this hour here. Yes.
Okay, well, basically, what we're told in the book of Revelation, in the Apocalypse, and by the way, that's what basically I write about, the prophecies of the Apocalypse, and also the signs that we are told are going to occur before this time period kicks in, which in my opinion is not too far away. But in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11, or verse 1, we're told that, we're told a star falls from heaven with the key to the bottomless pit. Now, a star is a metaphor in the Bible for an angel, and he falls to earth with the key to the bottomless pit. Regular stars falling in the skies don't have keys. And it says he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit. And out